You publish some data. So what? What is this presentation about? So just a precursor. Originally, we conceived this as a 5-minute main stage presentation. That's how it was pitched. And they came back to us and they said, can you do this as an hour? And we're like, sure. So this is our best attempt at talking about really expanding on this notion of you publish some data, so what, to really talk about the value chain of open data. So really expanding, taking a more expansive view about what open data means to us at the City and County of San Francisco. Before I proceed, I'm Jason Lally. I am the Open Data Program Manager for the City and County. And I work with Joy Bonaguro, who's our Chief Data Officer up in the front. She'll come up later to help answer some questions. Scream at me if I'm getting things wrong. I'll try to represent our program to the best of my ability. So at Data SF, our open data program, Joy and I really believe that open data can actually serve more users than it currently really is serving. When we initially really did a survey of best practices out in the field, there's a lot of talk about open data as a product. So data sets literally on a website that someone can get, and maybe there are APIs, but they're all driving at sort of a single user. People didn't really talk about open data as a process, as a pipeline, as value chain. So we fundamentally believe that a lot of those users were being failed. And so we're trying to fix that with our program. We're not there yet, but we have some ideas about how to get there. And one of the things that I want to talk about before moving on is that I want to return to something that Tim O'Reilly talked about couple years now, more or less. And basically, it's this notion that a lot of people think of government as a vending machine. And we have this vending machine model. You put in tax dollars and you get services. And when those services fail you, you just shake the vending machine, right? And that's your only form of protest. So this is something that Tim O'Reilly spoke about in sort of government as a platform and imagining government as a platform. But one of the things that we worry about, is that if we reduce open data to just a vending machine model, a similar model, we'll just be in the same boat. We're not actually leveraging what we're doing as a platform. So open data programs are not vending machines. And that's just the way we feel about it. You may feel differently, but we're not. Data SF isn't. So I want to motivate that by introducing you to a couple of users. And these aren't going to be all of the users, but just to give you some notions. You should meet Joni. Joni is a savvy analyst. She works for a local nonprofit. She's really good with Excel and R and all the latest tools, and she's learning a little bit of Python, and she loves using data on open data. She knows where to go. Not everything's always there that she wants to find, but generally she gets what she wants. She's really thankful for it. She wants to improve that data, though. She's found errors in that data, and she has no way to actually tell the city in a robust way what's happened. She can send an email, it goes out into the world, and nothing's done about it. So Joni doesn't want to embarrass the city, but she likes to talk about what she does. So she puts that up on her blog. She's active on Twitter, and she posts her methodology about a new analysis she did on housing and how great it is, and here's her methodology, and it's all open source. And she points out that there were some data errors, and she talks about how she cleaned them up, and then the press gets a hold of it, and they blow it up, and they talk about how bad the city is with data, and everything's terrible. And Joni feels bad about this. She's just trying to be a good citizen. She's just trying to offer her feedback back. And she would like tools that allow her to actually robustly participate in improving the data that the city provides. Casey is a program manager at the city. And Casey doesn't have as much experience with analysis, but she's good in Excel. And she has some basic data management practices under her belt. And she works on a program for which there's no real system of record built for her. There are systems of records that she pulls from, and she kind of munges data together and creates sort of new data sets. And she manages this in Excel, and it's a small data set, so it's not a lot, and she does a really good job of making sure it's of high quality. She's really interested in participating in the open data program. She's on board. She just can't see how it will help her with her reporting problems, with her reporting challenges. And the open data program is asking her to do a lot of work. You know, and it's exposing her to potentially embarrassing situation where maybe, you know, based on that the first story, data gets out, escapes, and maybe it wasn't the greatest quality because she made a mistake. Mistakes happen. So she's not being really helped. She's been asked to publish data, but where's the help for her around data quality and improving those systems? And then there's John. John's a legislative aide. His boss is a local elected official. And John, you know, is pretty fresh out of, you know, public policy school. He does analysis. He's learned how to do analysis, and so he's pretty savvy. But he has no idea how the city's organized. He's new, and he's just tracking down as much information as he can. His boss will drop things on his desk right away and say, "Turn this around. I need an analysis. I need to know more about I need you to produce information about this particular issue." So John's created some basic systems. He has Excel spreadsheets and Post-it notes to figure out who to talk to at the city and who to shake down. These are 3 users we've come into contact with, and they're by no means exhaustive. There are lots of others that I could talk about. But their pain points, their challenges are illustrative of where we're failing, where we're leaving value on the table that we could be driving through the way that we approach open data and open data publishing. How do we know this? Well, we talk to our users a lot. Joy and I have the pleasure of interacting with about 52 data coordinators around the city, and then all their colleagues, and we're constantly talking to people. But we also survey folks. And Joy, when she first came in, did a sort of a baseline survey. This is from the second round in this past year. One question was sort of about barriers to doing analysis at the city. This was given to city analysts, and lots of other questions in the survey. But one of the things is, you know, you take a look at that survey, and you can basically boil the challenges down into 3 basic categories. 1, knowledge, knowing where to go to access data. Where is the data? Where is it, the city? That's John's problem, right? Access. So, okay, I know where it is, but how do I get it? How do I get it out of the system? Casey has that problem, trying to interact with all these source systems and munge all her data together. She doesn't have access to robust SQL tools. And ability. So once you get the data, so you know where it is, you've got some access, but do you have the ability to actually use it, to analyze it, to put it in context? Right? So these are the 3 categories that we generally break these challenges down into. And we can arrange our program around these, and actually we do. This is a little faded actually, but you see at the top, knowledge, access, and ability, and yeah, this is really faded. In the original version, you can actually see that goal 1 hits knowledge and access, goal 2, access and ability, goal 3 hits ability, goal 4. But basically, these are goals from our strategic plan. If you want to, I'm not going to get into our strategic plan. If you want to learn more, this is all online at datasf.org. But basically, the main point here is we've aligned our goals, the way that we're approaching our program, to addressing these challenges directly, and driven by the user's pain points. So let's talk a little bit about knowledge, knowing where things are at the city. This is from our open data legislation. San Francisco has open data policy, chapter 22D, in the administrative code. And this is extracted from there, and it says, it's within 6 months, thou shalt, each department shall publish on DataSF a catalog of their department's data that can be made public, including both raw data sets and APIs. And so this was the legislative mandate, the trumpet call, the let's do this, you have to do this. It doesn't really say how and say why. That was Joy's job. And then Joy brought me on, our job. But One of the things we realized early is that we can go through this process and we can treat it like a checkbox, like inventory is done, moving on. But what we decided is that we can actually envision our inventory as a platform. And that if we're going to ask all of our data coordinators to do all of this work to extract data, inventory it, put it in spreadsheets, have us all stitch it together, we're going to do this. We're going to make sure that we get as much value out of that thing as possible. So literally, the inventory is just a data set. It's a data set, lives on our portal. We track it internally. But you can learn a lot more about our inventory process online at datasf.org and blog and resources. I'm not going to go into the process, but what I want to point out is we have this, it's a little hard to see here, but we have this one column called Inventory ID. When we looked around at other inventories, we saw lists, we saw data sets, but we didn't see it being leveraged as a platform. They weren't tracking them in this way. The reason why this is important to us is that this is actually the hook upon which we can build many, many different tools and processes. So every time, for example, when we go to publish a data set, we expect that it should be in the inventory. If it's not, add it to the inventory. We have a tool for that. So everything can hang around this inventory as a platform. And it'll show up a couple times in a lot of the examples I'm going to give. But how do we keep that inventory fresh? Fresh bread. There are a couple of things we do. Most open data programs have this basic feature about suggesting a data set or requesting data. And currently, that for us is just, it goes to a Google form. We're currently experimenting with a couple of different help desk platforms that will allow us to do much more robust processing of these things and more transparent tracking of metrics and measures. But the Google form worked for us initially, and now it's showing it's where. But this allows us to essentially, it's sort of a catch-all. We don't want this to be the way that data gets surfaced to the portal, but it's at least the last resort where if you can't find it, it's not in the inventory, you can go and request it, and then we can process it and get back to you about whether it exists, and then we can add it to the inventory. Speaking of adding it to the inventory, we are piloting a new approach. We want to do, so we did this big inventory process, and we had everyone document all these data sets and put them in spreadsheets and send them around. We don't want to do that again. We want this to be an ongoing maintenance process now. So we're done with bulk loading. Now it's about maintenance. So we're using ScreenDoorer. We're piloting using this to actually collect the necessary information for the inventory. And the great thing is this is available to anyone in any of the departments at the city. Now, it doesn't go into the inventory immediately. There's a workflow here. The data coordinator gets engaged, and then there's a decision about, oh, is this actually data? Is this, do we need to change the title here? There's some vetting. But it allows anyone in the organization to raise their hand and say, oh, I got data over here. And it takes it out of just putting it one person's job and allowing us to actually expand the role so that folks can actually participate who aren't data coordinators or aren't open data staff. And so used together with the request process, one thing we can do and one thing that we're linking together is a request comes in. We decide that, yes, in fact, that data does exist. The first step is add it to the inventory. It shows up in the inventory, and then it goes into the publishing plans, and we figure out how we're going to get it published. Speaking of publishing plans, so every department is expected to produce a publishing plan. Now, there wasn't much direct guidance in the legislation, so we made it up. And what we did is we decided that rather than have everyone go off and do their own thing and produce PDF reports, which would just not be a good starting point for an open data program, we wanted to standardize at least the basic process. So every department now has a web page on Data SF that has a plan narrative, a set of metrics that is actually driven by that inventory I showed for. Again, inventory as platform, and then, of course, the inventory down below. What this allows us to do, again, addressing that knowledge gap, is we're now putting the inventory in the broader context of the city's plan. So it's not just this thing sitting out on an open data portal, it's actually put in context. And that's really important for us because we want people to really understand and empathize with the fact that there's a lot going on here. It takes a lot more to publish a data set than pressing a button. And then we give back to the data coordinators and people in the department basic metrics so they can check in on how they're doing, right? They don't have to spin up their own spreadsheets. They don't have to create their own systems. It's all just given to them, you know. So we didn't want them to have to do undifferentiated lifting. Sorry. So two more things that we're doing to sort of address the knowledge gap is, so we have the inventory, we keep it fresh, we put it on the web, and we drive people there. You know, you can go to datasf.org/publishing/plans, or you can go to the homepage and you can click read the plans. You can get all this. It's all up on the web, all open. But it's still not enough. We're trying to increase our communications game. And one of the things we do is we actually participate weekly in our local brigade. Are you all familiar with the brigades? Brigade program, Code for America? Is anyone here Code for San Francisco? Raise your hand. Great. So we work with our local brigade, Code for San Francisco. And one of the things that we just started piloting last week, in fact, was a special presentation that we're going to give mostly every week, hopefully. Again, it's a pilot. Better know a data set. So what we do is it's 2 slides. We just take a data set, we highlight it. And we don't talk about, it's not about analysis, it's not about like explaining the program in great detail, but just enough to get people interested and pique their interest about, you know, the program behind the data set, the number of views of that data set, when applicable, ways that it's already being used. So just enough to kind of get people's interest stoked and drive demand for these data. So, because if departments are going to spend all this time getting data out there, we want to make sure it gets used, right, and leveraged. And we do something similar, but in a web version. We just started this as well. We do our SF Open Data quarterly roundups. So we'll see how this goes. In the next quarter, we're sort of accelerating our publishing. So we'll probably have to be more curated about this. But the last quarter, we were able to actually feature all the data sets that went up. And so it's just basically another way for us to talk about the data sets. Again, give quick examples of what they are. And then what you can't see in here is we have a little button. It says tweet your appreciation at the departments. So if you tweet, you just click the button, opens up Twitter, and you can tweet your appreciation at the various departments that have published open data. And please do that. Show them a little love. They go through a lot of work. So that's knowledge. That's how we think largely we're solving that. We've got work to do, but that one we feel like we're on a good path here, and we really like the notion of inventory as platform, and it's really bearing fruit. And the next one, access, there's much more work to be done, and we're evolving our ideas here. But I want to start with sort of a modification. So we talked about the data request process, right? So we had this catch-all, and but we realized, well, we have an inventory. What if people request things that have already been inventoried? How do we connect the inventory to the data request process? So a couple of things we're going to do here. Well, at a minimum, we've been talking about, and we're still. This is not this is not an actual mock-up, but just a quick thing. So here's the inventory, right? Again, inventory as platform. Just add an endorse button, right? I endorse this data set, right? So the notion is it's essentially acting like a data request, but I'm requesting something that's already been inventoried, and behind the scenes, we're connecting that request directly to that inventory record, and we can feed data back to our departments and say, this is where you're getting a lot of love for your data. Maybe you should, modify your publication plans to take that into account. But we want to take that a little further, and these ideas are still emerging here. And so say you don't know where to find the inventory, you come to the Open Data Portal, you see the Request Data button. We'd love that when you're requesting data, it's just saying, hey, there's data sets that might match what you're looking for in the inventory, and give them a little bit of like just-in-time learning so that they can say, oh, if they don't know what an inventory is, they can it's sort of immediately there. They can click on the one that they're like, oh, yeah, that's the one that I want. To them, nothing's changed. But to us, we're actually now connecting the request directly to that inventory record. So they're making the same kind of request, but for us, it actually drives additional value and drives additional value for the departments that have to prioritize these data sets. So returning to that survey I mentioned earlier, there's another big issue around access, and it's just basically knowing who to call. Once you, what we realized is that we had this inventory. So we solved the knowledge problem, but we still the connecting. So the inventory doesn't show you all the people who are behind it, and that we don't want people just calling and contacting those people directly because they've got a lot on their plates already. But we realized, again, leveraging inventory as a platform, we could actually help connect people to data, and I'll get to that. Apologize. I'll get to that in a moment, what the product looks like, but I want to take you through what it feels like. So there's a task that happens at the city a lot, and it probably it happens outside the city, and it's obtain data. Many of you have probably gone through this. So it begins with, hey, you got this data set? And that assumes that you know the right person to connect to, right? So hopefully we've solved that already, but hey, you got this data? Maybe. Can I have it? Hello? Are you there? Another round of emails. Here it is. Oh, great. I've got it now. Thanks. I opened this and I got some questions. Enter the question death spiral. So now you're in rounds and rounds of emails. And if you want to update that data, see previous. So this is a problem, this is a pain that people feel constantly at the city, and it's not one that's going to go away immediately with open data. Over time, we want to push people to those data sets that are already on the portal, but it's going to take time for us to get there. And sometimes you still want to get connected to the person who maintains that data because you still might have questions. So very similar to Endorse, it's actually going to be based on similar infrastructure, but now it's for city employees, and the button is connect. And all we're doing is we're doing a handshake. So we're taking them out of email, we're creating that handshake, passing them all back off into email. The great thing is they just have to know where to go find the inventory, find the data set that they're interested in, and connect to that person. And then we can collect data about how many connections there are around a data set. And so that helps us improve the program. Again, we can provide that data back to our data coordinators. We're driving additional value around actually leveraging this task that happens a lot, which is connecting. Oh, how many of you, do any of you have to create reports for your city? Anybody do that? Okay. So we'll talk after this. But at the City and County of San Francisco, we produce lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reports. And we think that open data can actually drive, can help solve this reporting problem. So we have a lot of folks who produce PDF reports, and we all find that painful because there's data in there and it's trapped inside there. We have a couple of departments who have actually been experimenting with this on their own, leveraging tools. This is our ethics commission, and what they do is they actually have Tableau reports that they're feeding off of data that's on the open data portal, and they do these sort of curated dashboards around elections, and tracking campaign contributions. And they've been very progressive, and they've been wonderful super users of open data. Additionally, the planning department has to do a quarterly pipeline report. So they do this report, and this is all the development that's happened in the past quarter, and they produce this as a data set. They also have a PDF as well, but they have a little map. It's embedded, and you can click through and get the data set. And so these are some early ideas around linking reporting to the actual data and making sure that those are connected. But I think we can do better here, and we don't have any mock-ups or solid ideas here. But one of the things that we're excited about is kind of piloting, what does what does it look like to take a data publisher all the way through the process and then at the end give them a lovely toolkit that says, here's what you can do. Here are the reporting tools that you have. Here's ways to improve your reporting, right? What are the trainings? What are the services we can wrap around this? And Rentboard is one place where we can potentially test this. This is their annual report, and it probably looks familiar. There's probably similar reports around cities you've seen. It's in a PDF. It's not linked to the data. But the good news is we've almost got all of their data up on the Open Data Portal. We have about 3 more data sets, and they'll be up before the end of the year, hopefully sooner. And at that point, we can actually talk to them about, okay, how do you extract that data out of the Open Data Portal and leverage it for your reporting purposes, so you're not hand coding. I mean, I've heard stories about how they're, anyway, I won't go into it, but they could definitely benefit from some of the tools we can offer through the Open Data program. Finally, around access, there's sort of required reports, but there's an opportunity also for us, for Open Data, to really drive sort of operational transparency and transparency generally. And so it may not be required by edict or administrative policy, but it's generally good practice to track what you're doing. And so one of the things that we're doing, sort of piloting this notion, is linking our inventory and our published data sets to a dashboard that we call Data SF in Progress, that allows us to actually track our own progress and our own performance. And in a month or two, Joy will have more about sort of evaluation criteria we're using to actually evaluate open data. And when we looked around and scanned the field, there weren't a lot of robust approaches to that. So we're kind of, again, making it up a little bit, and so we will welcome your feedback on that. But this is sort of the initial sort of productization of that, and this will evolve and change over time. But the notion is that this is connected directly to the data that we're publishing. So we're not thinking about it, right? We're not having to do anything additional. And then one last gap which we always try to help our data publishers cross is around. Sometimes there's not a clear understanding. Like they'll go through Open Data Publishing, but they'll still continue to answer Sunshine requests that could otherwise be answered by sending people to the data portal, by sending them a spreadsheet that they attach to the email. And we'd like that behavior to stop. So one of the things that we do is we again provide training and support and templates so that all they have to do is attach this documentation in a little email whenever they get requests that can be answered by things that are already on the data portal, right? It's not going to be inclusive of everything, but in this case, just a 2-pager on SFPD incidents. They get a lot of requests at the PD about incident data. A lot of those requests can actually be answered in a self-service way. So this provides just enough information to get people who are seeking that data to that point. And of course, we have feedback loops, and we're trying to improve this over time, improve that whole process of self-service discovery and analysis. But this is just a simple way that we can help move people across the chasm. So knowledge, access, we think we got knowledge kind of solved. Access, we've got some tools to develop, and they're still in development. Ability is a little bit trickier, but solvable. And we pretty much break this down into 2 different areas. One is internal capability, and then another community capability. First, talk about internal capability. One of the things that we hear a lot from our analysts all over the city is that they do not feel like they have adequate training to do the analysis work. A lot of them are doing self-service training and maybe keeping their skills up to date on their own, but they're not wrapped around in a loving embrace of training by the city. And we get this from both surveys that specifically call out, would love training on specific tools and analytical techniques. And then when we ask them what they want training on, they actually tell us Tableau and R and SPSS and Excel. And what we've done is we've taken this information and, working with the controller's office, designed a program called the Data Academy. And it's essentially just a training program where we've leveraged courses that the controller's office was already teaching, and we designed some additional ones, and we kind of package it together. And we announce these courses to about 500 people who are on a listserv, and they fill up in about 10 to 20 minutes, and they all wait list. We cannot keep up with the demand. I think we're on track. I just had a meeting with the controller's office, and they told us that in the past quarter, they have now done 10 trainings. They're on track to actually double the number of courses if they continue at that clip than they had last year. We're trying to scale, and it's hard, but it's a good problem to have. The reason that we think this is so successful is that the classes are set up to be schedule-friendly, demand-driven, and free. They're generally 2-hour courses to half-day workshops. Like I said, they're based on feedback, and they're all free. We think that the content is pretty compelling, and is another reason why folks keep showing up. These are a couple of examples of what we're offering. So, and you can find more on the website, but we have a Tableau series, so intro to advanced. We have an Excel series, similar. And then we also make sure that we're covering the open data tools, right? So there's a sort of standard analytical tools. We want to make sure people know how to use the open data portal to actually for their departmental goals. So we actually have a class, how to leverage the open data portal for your department. We're teaching them how to actually take copy a link, an OData link, put it in Excel, and then they can actually connect the data so that they can do a really interesting analysis. We have a course on data usability, where we're actually training our data publishers to produce more useful data, best practices around what not to do. Don't put formats in your CSV, those kinds of things. And then basics of information design, where once you have the data and how do you present it? And this isn't necessarily about storytelling, but just how do you make it nice and beautiful and easy? And Joy actually teaches that course, and it's in very high demand. Actually, this is from that course, so they do a lot of hands-on workshops. It's a lot of fun. So the Data Academy is the courses are actually physical. We do curate a number of other opportunities, so you can actually go to the course catalog and see there's training opportunities at the library. There are training opportunities at our local community colleges and state universities. And so there's a curated list of those, but the core are those hands-on trainings. What we're going to do in the next month actually is next month or two, improve the Data Academy site. So this will actually evolve so that right now it's sort of a landing page, kind of has a little bit of information about the Academy and an invite to get on the listserv. And we have about 2 to 3 new people signing up almost every day to get on that listserv. We want to evolve this so that there's actual course materials here, instructor profiles. We want to make it a really inviting experience, and we want to make sure that those course materials are in one place so everyone knows after they take a course, this is where you go, that's how you get them. And then for people who aren't taking the course, maybe they just want to peruse the materials. Or maybe folks in other cities want to see what we're doing, right? And so we want to be very open and transparent about how we're training our staff. Finally, in terms of internal capability, one of the things that we found across the city is that a lot of people are trying to solve, a number of issues that can be solved at scale. And so we talk about this as automation as a service. San Francisco is a very distributed technology environment. So we have a Department of Technology, but a lot of departments have their own IT, they maintain their own systems. So we really are very service-oriented in how we offer this. And things like data quality issues, geographic assignments should be a commodity service. There's no reason why everyone should be trying to figure out a new solution to geocoding addresses when we can do that centrally through automation. There's no reason why we should have everyone figure out a new way to assign supervisor districts, right? So these are things that we can solve at scale. And so we've been developing, this is a very high level, very high level diagram around our automation as a service, but we have a lot of collateral on that, and over time we'll be publishing more and more about how we're deploying that. We're actually hiring right now to really accelerate this portion of our program. So in terms of community capability, internal capability, we at least have our fingers on a lot of the pulse of what's going on. We can train our employees directly. We can offer these services. We have a lot of levers to pull on. Community capability is a little trickier, especially because Joy and I are two people, and so we got to get creative about how we're really engaging the community, how we're building capability and understanding in the community around open data. One of the first ways that we're doing this is sort of a lighter touch in terms of we're not interacting directly with community members, but we are trying to build out context around our data, and we call these strategic releases. So combining data in context, basically data with a product, and I'll explain that a little bit more, but by example, the first one we've done is the Housing Data Hub. Essentially, it's a centralized place to go to learn about all the policies and programs that affect housing affordability in San Francisco. And it takes a portfolio approach. So here's a page where you can go on policies and programs. So we have affordable housing financing, home buyer assistance, inclusionary housing, public housing. If you know a little bit about all these programs, they're not maintained by one agency. They're maintained by multiple agencies, right? People outside the city don't think that way. So we're trying to just shift a little bit so we explain these complex, complicated issues in a more robust way. So even though we have great metadata, or we're working on great metadata and great documentation for every data set on the portal, even when we have all of that, it won't necessarily describe how these things are connected. So these complex issues are worth describing in context. And you can find this at housing.datasf.org. One of the key concepts here, again, I mentioned that we want to tie the policies and programs to data. So we have, this shows up at a couple of different places. So we have a data browser on the site, but we also have every single policy and program has the related administrative data on it. And if you were to go to a single data set, you get a title, this curated view. You get something we call just-in-time learning moments. So sort of just a little bit of context, like what's going on in this chart down here. And then the chart itself. But we also, down here, invite people to get the source data set. So we're inviting people to actually go into the data. And these visuals are actually tied to the data through calls to our open data portal. So we use something called, I don't know, use too jargony, but application programming interfaces. So our portal allows us to actually reach inside, grab some data, and allows the machines to talk to each other. And so all these charts are updated every time we update the data on the portal, which is great. We don't have to think about it. We're leveraging platforms. And what this does for us is helps us create enduring sources of truth and unbroken data lineages. So again, going back to that concept of inventory as a platform, it would be really nice to be able to follow from inventory to published data set to product. So you can trace it this way and you can trace it back. And that's really important because it drives context and understanding, but it also drives transparency. It allows, if we've done something wrong or we've curated it a certain way that people don't agree with, they can at least go and look at it themselves. Additionally, we're constantly, I mentioned earlier, we're at Code for San Francisco, so we go to the brigade every Wednesday night, practically every Wednesday night. And we're there to listen. We're there to provide an entry point for the folks that do show up to to talk to us and talk about the data. And one thing that we want to do better over the next quarter, next year, is now that we've got these publishing plans and this inventory, we kind of have a good vision of where this is going, we can actually coordinate a lot better with our brigade. We can talk about opportunities for driving demand and interest. And the final thing that wrapping up, we're doing is we're going to meet with our library probably next month. And the library has really great programs. And if you haven't yet, I suggest you reach out to your local librarian. They're a wonderful resource. And at the library, what they have a couple of different programs. They have the Mix, which was just created, and it's really around teen and youth programs and digital literacy. And they also have the Bridge at Maine, which is, again, literacy, but geared toward adult and families. So we're going to meet with them and really talk to them about, okay, how can we leverage these programs? How can we leverage your librarians to actually bring and touch the people at the points where they're actually interacting? So they're actually interacting with the librarians every day, asking questions, right? How can we use that as a feedback loop to improve open data? I talked about a lot of things. This is a quick summary. These slides will be available, but we're looking at addressing the challenge of knowledge accessibility with a number of tools, services, and approaches, and we're trying to do it in as user-centered a way as possible. And all of this, hopefully, speaks to this notion that I want to return to: open data programs are not vending machines. They're more than that. They are platforms. They are potential for platforms. And that's what we're driving at Data SF. And I want to leave you with one thing, which is basically that the reason that Joy and I do a lot of this work is that we're really driven by making the city better, operate better. Not just operate, but tell the stories and make better decisions. And so this is an end in itself, but it's mostly a means to an end. And ultimately, we do this for the love of the city. And thank you for your time. And do I have time for questions? Yeah. So we'll go to questions, and I want to invite Joy up to help answer questions.
Yes, what level of demand are you seeing for your data sets from your public, and how dependent are some of your outside apps or outside agencies on the information that's been published to your data site?
Can you say the second part again? Just
Are there other entities or other groups that are very much dependent on, operationally dependent on information that you're posting to your data site?
Do you want to?
Yeah, the first part of the question. Hello, is this working? Awesome. Okay. The first part was, I think, demand. And so we have a range of demand, both internal and external. And so obviously our portal lets us measure that. But the sheer number of data requests we're getting helps us size that demand. However, we feel like we don't have as much. People hitting a data set isn't the same as people using a data set, right? And so while we have kind of good data on that, we've been wanting to have better analytics so we can actually quantify our user personas more effectively. So how many people are downloading a data set versus using the API. And we don't have super great metrics on that, but that's something that we're trying to get our vendor to sort of instrument the analytics. So when we use Google Analytics, we can do that better. We're also hoping to capture the use stories more effectively through what we're now calling Made with Open Data, which will be our version of a showcase. Another thing we're doing is through our evaluation plan, and we'll be publishing that, where that allows us to measure not just the demand, but the impact of open data, which I think is more important. And it's hard to measure externally, and we're experimenting with things like Net Promoter Scores. But for internally, our survey instruments will help quantify the impact of the open data. And then what was the last piece?
Are there entities external to your organization that are operationally dependent on data?
I mean, to the extent that they're building services that use it, yes, absolutely. And I would say there's operational dependence internally as well. Because I can't tell you how many times I've walked up to someone's desktop and they're pulling data from SF Open Data and it's driving things on their system.
questions want to follow on that. Are you measuring the use of internal state, city and county folks using your data?
Yeah, absolutely. So our evaluation plan, which will go out next month, I hope. Or this month. Oh wait, next month. It tracks our survey data. Gets at, like, for one example, one of the impact metrics we have is, has SF Open Data made your analysis easier, faster, something else. There's a third adjective, and our goal is for that to increase over time. If it doesn't, it suggests we have a problem.
Yeah.
You mentioned some people are using it for their own use ratio. Can you mention examples of what are those examples of applications that people are using data, and what sectors mainly are being used?
What was the second part?
What sectors?
Oh, what sectors? You want to take this one?
I couldn't hear that.
So, so the questions give examples of how people are using our data and what sectors. Yeah. Do you want to take that?
Yeah. So currently, we're seeing a lot. People are using the data and what sectors, right? Is that what you said? So I think the earliest ones are around transportation. And that's just, with GTFS and sort of all the sort of leading there. I would say that the transportation sector uses our data a great deal. It's not an industry, but we find that that our incident data is actually, our crime incident data is used quite a bit. It's one of the highest hit data sets, and it actually shows up in a lot of different use cases. So a lot of analysis, a lot of community policing. We get a lot of people from different crime watch groups that are actually looking at that, and when it goes down, they worry. Additionally, there's, I don't know what to call them, but there's a sort of grassroots journalists that have begun using. So we have a group, Hoodline, in San Francisco, that has actually been building sort of an internal dashboard, and they're connecting to our data sets to actually use that as like an early warning system to actually surface stories for Hoodline in neighborhoods, and they're doing it by neighborhood. Do you want to add?
Yeah, no, I was going to say definitely media is a sector that uses it. There's a whole range of people who are essentially building permits and building inspections and those kinds of things. The sectors that are using that, they're offering B2B, where they're offering services to building managers and things like that. But we're also getting, the academic sector uses our data, right? Researchers in academia use our data. They actually also use it often for student classes. And so I'll come and give classes where they end up using it in data science courses, or around public issues, or data visualization courses. And so I would say it definitely hits its private sector, the public sector, and nonprofit sector, as well as academia.
And then it was also used to produce the movie Big Hero 6.
Oh yeah, that's our favorite.
That's our favorite one. So they used data from the portal to actually map the city and build the original 3D model. Of course, they added to it, and San Francisco looks very different than San Francisco, but yes.
And then there's some other, well, I won't go into those other uses. There's been some other uses.
Know that if it's already data that they have and they're using it internally, what is the kind of selling point that you have to, incentivize them to have a staff member do this if they're already reporting on the state, reporting every year or every federally, all this.
Yeah.
This seems like they already have the information, just about getting them to open it up, right? And to pass it.
Yeah. I can. We spent a lot of time reframing the value proposition of open data. It was a very narrowly framed value proposition when I came to the city, which was like, publish your data. And it was like this shake your fisty angry thing and people are like, I'm busy, this isn't my core competency. So one, we reframed the value for the internal as a key beneficiary of open data, not just external. And then the other key thing is we provide a lot of support, and we don't just say publish, good luck. We offer publishing services. We try to break it down and make it as simple as possible. And so I think selling those alternative value propositions versus simply the maybe someone will make an app with it, right? And so we've created a lot of relationships to create that pipeline of data that didn't exist before.
Is kind of the most successful partner in these departments that you found have been kind of the champions for it and are able to kind of sell up other departments on it in a way? Does that make sense?
Casey, I think.
Yeah. So Casey.
No, as an example.
Casey, our persona is based on real person, so program managers, once they see it, like they start selling it to their staff. But I'd also say that we actually have had really good data coordinators, and that was an appointment, but they've been really great at just sort of, they get it, they understand what this is about, and they struggle as much with the program managers with getting data from other departments. So they feel that pain too. So in as much as open data helps them solve that, they're willing to offer their data back, right? So it's not just it's the transaction isn't just data out, it's also data from other departments, right? And so that helps like build the value across different departments.
Yeah, and I think we spent a lot of time building relationships over the last year, and I fed a lot of people at a lot of lunches, and I would also say Data Academy has been a place, they love Data Academy so much that it's sort of like a toehold in the department, and once we start working with them, they really like that.
Yes?
You said that you spent a lot of time last year about building relationships, but when did you start to build and when did you start to find these data managers in each department? How much time does it take?
So we had to do this legislatively required inventory process, and that took us about at least a year. And as you can see from our status, we're not done yet. Appointing the data coordinators, I think I was told I wouldn't get more than 15 out of the 52 departments. Got all 52. But I had to be pretty persistent, and sort of people kind of learned that we didn't go away. And then when they worked with us, it turns out we were really helpful and supportive. And by doing all these value add services, we're not just like publish your data and then go away. By having all the value added, like, can we offer you geo assignment services? And like, why, yes, that would be so helpful. Or can we do data quality checks in the publishing process? So I think being a value add, not just a demander of data, is a huge differentiator for us.
One more thing. Are your departments on the same level or you're above on them?
Oh, they're all masterful. No, they range from like 4-person departments to like, billion-dollar enterprises with their own IT shops, giant IT shops, and CIOs. So there's a huge, huge range, and we actually custom and tailor our approach during the inventory and through the publishing. We divide them into high complexity, medium, and low complexity departments, and we tailor our intervention and our guidance strategies based on that.
Yeah.
On the end question, yes, a department that shall not be named here. But
So sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing, but yeah. Yeah, and it's a range, but generally, like Joyce said, we have sort of different intervention strategies. So for example, those departments, those smaller departments that have sort of said, oh, we'll do a data set in the next 6 months, which is perfectly reasonable, right? One of the things that we did through the publishing plans is we did not say, you should do this many data sets, and we let them actually say in their own voice what they want to publish, and then we're using that to actually inform our strategy about how we engage them. So for example, there are a set of small departments with a lot of confidential data. We're going to do a little confidential data workshop with them, right? And they have 1, maybe 2 data sets apiece, right? So we can get that done in one workshop, right? So we're basically letting the planning process kind of surface these things, and the inventory surface these issues early so that we can then design strategies to approach each of them. So there might be other smaller departments that don't have confidential data. We have a different strategy for them. We have a lot of big departments that want to publish a lot of data. Well, we're doing self-service with them. So we've designed sort of different approaches around each of those. And then more broadly, in general, smaller departments will need a lot more support. And that automation as a service that I mentioned, they're going to leverage that a lot more. Whereas maybe like our airport or our Department of Public Works, they may be able to do that in a self-service way. We're still going to want to track it. We're still going to want to have it go through the various processes and get documented. But they can take on more of that. So.
You can go get a drink now. All right, thanks everyone.